Even after an early scare in the Ian Gary fight, the Locky Trinity comes through for us, and we're looking to build upon that momentum this week as I got another three-legger for you guys for UFC Las Vegas. Quickly to note, after some demand on the Patreon, the members have wanted the Locky Trinity a little bit earlier in the week so we can lock in some better odds. So that's what I'm going to be doing moving forward, dropping it on the Patreon first on Tuesdays of fight week and then dropping it to the public on Thursdays of fight week. So you can get slightly better odds if you hop onto the Patreon to check it out. Link in the description below, not just for the parlay, but a ton of other great content, including best predictions and props for every single upcoming UFC Bellator card, and not to mention the regional shows, of which this week we got PFL Challenger Series Week 7 as well as LFA 154. Next week, Cage Warriors 150, as well as the last week of PFL Challenger Series as well. So check out all that great content on the Patreon, link in the description below. All right, let's get right into this three-legger that I got for you guys for UFC Las Vegas. First of which is going to be JJ Aldrich, who takes on Ariane Lipski, and I think that this is a pretty bad matchup for Lipski. Now, JJ Aldrich has made a very good name for herself over her last couple fights, even though she came up short in her last matchup against now super hot prospect and budding contender in the flyweight division, Erin Blanchfield. Aldrich was having her way with Blanchfield in that first round, outstriking her, using her footwork and her combinations to get away from the takedown game of Blanchfield, and then touching her up on the feet with output and solid punches down the pipe. In that second round, she managed to get locked up in some sort of choke, which, you know, very minor slip up, but it just showcased that JJ Aldrich is in her best form to date. I believe she was on a 3-fight winning streak before that matchup, and it probably could have even been a 5-fight winning streak had she got the nod in this Sabina Mazo fight, which a lot of people believed that she deserved. She's a very solid fighter and has a plethora of UFC experience under her belt now, and I think that her striking approach is going to be too much for the violent, or the queen of violence, Ariane Lipski, who has seemingly left the violence in KSW, which is where she was highly touted before coming over to the UFC. She hasn't really panned out in the UFC as a lot of people expected her to, and her level of competition that she's defeated compared to the ones that she's lost to in the UFC clearly shows us what her cap is, even if she decided to move her training camp to American Top Team, which is what she did before the Montana De La Rosa fight. So I think that this is a great matchup for JJ Aldrich to go out there and outstrike Ariane Lipski en route to a decision victory. That is leg one of the Locky Trinity. Leg two, we're going to go with Carl Williams, who's making his UFC debut after a successful trek on the Contender Series as a plus 200 underdog against Penn State collegiate wrestling standout Jimmy Lawson. I was one of the few guys that was on Carl Williams that night, as I saw that his cardio was much better and his wrestling was, or at least MMA wrestling, was up to par with the Jimmy Lawson's, and we saw that from the jump as he was able to get the takedown over and over again and just grind out Jimmy Lawson en route to a decision victory and securing his contract to the UFC. That's his game. Even though he was a light heavyweight in the past, he has transferred over to the heavyweight division pretty well, and he has the strength and cardio to take these opponents to the ground and grind them out over 15-minute periods. I really like his style, and I like his relentlessness in terms of going for takedowns and securing that top position, and like I said, he has the cardio to do it. His striking still needs a little bit of work, but when he feels he has a legitimate striking advantage over his opponents, that's where you see him get finishes on the feet like he did against Simon Marini a couple fights ago. Lucas Brzeski, or Dresky, I should say is how it's pronounced, really did impress me in his UFC debut against Martin Budai, as I pretty much shit on him during my entire breakdown of him in that matchup. I was not impressed with what I saw on the regional scene, but he showcased solid striking and good enough footwork to stay away from that clinching game that Martin Budai normally succeeds with in his fights. But I don't think that Budai really committed to the takedowns or the clinch game after he failed on that first attempt. Carl Williams, on the other hand, I think he will be relentless enough with getting this fight to the ground, getting it into the clinch position, and then eventually wearing on that gas tank of Dresky and eventually pulling off this fight or this win via decision. I like his style, I like his relentlessness, and I think those will be the keys in him getting his hand raised in this fight. Next up, and the final leg of the Locky Trinity this week is going to go down in the main event with Petr Yan going out there and defeating Merab Dvalishvili. Now, Dvalishvili's output and a high activity rate might be a little bit of a concern for anybody looking to back Petr Yan. However, I think the takedown defense, the grappling defense, and then ultimately the striking advantage that Petr Yan is going to have in this matchup will allow him to pick apart Merab Dvalishvili and potentially even finish him in the latter half of this fight. I picked Jose Aldo as well against Merab Dvalishvili, knowing he would stuff all the takedowns. He stuffed 16 takedowns, but it seemed like he was a little bit muzzled and scared about the eventual takedown or takedown attempts that were going to be coming his way, which is why he was not able to get off on his strikes. Petr Yan, on the other hand, I have no doubt that this guy will be more than happy to engage with the fear of potentially being taken down, knowing that he'll eventually work back to his feet so that he can get back to his handiwork. And I think that's why he's going to end up winning this fight, is he might get taken down a couple times, but the reason Merab has been able to secure 64 takedowns on 155 attempts is the fact that his opponents keep getting back to their feet because his top control is not the greatest. And I expect Petr Yan to work back to his feet relatively quickly, and then from there get off on the better strikes, and like I said, possibly even land a knockout in the latter half of this matchup. So there you guys go. The Locky Trinity for UFC Las Vegas is JJ Aldrich, Carl Williams, and Petr Yan. Earlier this week when I dropped it on the Patreon, it was plus 174. Now putting it together on DraftKings, it's gone down to plus 153. Good luck on the Locky Trinity, and I'll see you guys again tomorrow for the 3 best prop bets for UFC Las Vegas.